In this video, I am making the ultimate in comfort food, that family classic meatloaf. Stay tuned. Welcome to This and That with Denise Jordan. I teach women to make wise home health and beauty decisions. So if you want to learn more about running a household, subscribe. Or if you want to see reviews about products that can benefit you in your home, subscribe, because I do videos about those topics all the time. So hit that subscribe button and double tap that little bell icon so you don't miss any upcoming videos. But definitely check out the show notes in the description box below, because that's where I will link my favorite housekeeping and gardening solutions. Okay, let's jump into it. Today, I am making Sunday dinner, and we are having that American classic, one of the favorites from my childhood, meatloaf. And the recipe is not super special, but it's what we've always done. So let me show you how we prepare meatloaf in the Jordan family. So what do we need to get started? I've got a pound of ground beef and a pound of ground pork. I like to mix those two meats together for my meatloaf. We're going to need 1/2 cup of chopped onion, about 1/4 cup of chopped peppers, and I will use red or green depending upon what I have at home. So we're having red and yellow today. 1 tablespoon of vegetable oil, 1 cup of Heinz ketchup, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, 1 cup of breadcrumbs, 1 egg. You're going to put it in a 9x5 loaf pan. If you don't have a loaf pan, what you can do is just use a regular baking dish, and you can form a loaf in the dish, down the center of the dish. So whether you've got a loaf pan or a regular baking dish, it doesn't matter. And then we're going to set our oven for 350 degrees. So I've got the oven already turned on and preheating while I mix the ingredients together. So now let's get that started. We'll get these peppers chopped up. Now let's take care of this onion. I probably got 3/4 cup of onion here rather than 1/2 cup, but that's okay. It'll be fine. So now let's saute the vegetables in the vegetable oil. 3/4 cup of onion instead of 1/2. Now we're going to add the 1 cup of ketchup. It'll make the most amazing sauce to go on top and to go inside. So now I'm going to divide the sauce in half and set aside half of the sauce, and the other half is going to be reserved for later. Now we'll put the ground beef, the ground pork, and the other seasonings in here. This is a nifty little tool right here because it just kind of helps to break up the ground beef and the pork. You see, you just kind of punch it down like that, and just really helps to break it up. So now I'm going to add the 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, a cup of breadcrumbs, and let me just beat this egg real quick. Now pour that in. And now I'll mix it all up. And you just can get in there with your hands and just really squeeze it and just mix everything up. If you don't like getting your hands dirty, and sometimes I have to admit I don't, then you can wear a pair of gloves. So now we're just gonna get in here and get this all mixed up. Let's get the sauce put inside now. We've got our onions and our peppers and all that good stuff. Gonna mix all that together. All of that goodness. And it's gonna make for a really flavorful meatloaf. Now when my kids were little, one of my sons didn't like anything green, or if he could feel any kind of texture. Anything green was a pickle. That meant green peppers, celery, whatever. So when they were smaller, I would put the onions, the celery, the green peppers in a food processor and puree it, and then put it in the meatloaf. So I got the same flavor, but you didn't have that added texture. But that's just a little tip for you parents out there whose kids have a problem with some textury things. I decided to go with a casserole dish instead of a loaf pan because I thought, just in case there are those people out there without a loaf pan, I wanted you to be able to see what you can do. So I've lightly greased the bottom of this loaf pan with just a little bit of shortening. And then I'm going to take my mixture out of the bowl and drop it in the dish. And I want to get all of the onions and just everything out. And then you just form it into a loaf. So you can just kind of pat it with your fingers. So I'm just patting it into a little shape. And you can probably see I'm kind of patting it to the shape of the dish. But that's okay. So now I'm going to pop it into the oven at 350 degrees. The oven's been preheating while I've been working on this, and you'll know the meatloaf is done when the internal temperature is 160 degrees, but it'll probably take about an hour. So I'll get these gloves off and I'll pop it in the oven. So we'll let that do its thing for the next hour, and then we'll get it out. And when we get it out, we'll put the sauce on top. So in the meantime, I'll keep it moving. Now, just one thing I want to point out for my young wives, and I only bring this up because one of my viewers had mentioned when I was making a turkey that there were things that she didn't know about poultry and keeping the sink clean and that kind of thing. So I just wanted to share with you that I've already washed up all the dishes that I got out when I was making the meatloaf. But then once I'm done with that, one of the things I will do is I will clean the sink out with some Clorox kitchen cleaner, paying particular to the handle. Because even though I wore gloves while I was kind of smooshing up the meatloaf, the raw meat, I did touch the handle of the faucet off and on to turn the water on. So one of the things that I will do then is I will clean up the sink. Using some Clorox kitchen cleaner. Making sure that I clean the handle of the faucet of the sink. And then I will put this dishcloth and the dish towel that I keep down here when I'm working in my container where I keep these white towels. So the internal temperature needs to register at 160 degrees or higher. And it is registering at 165. So now this is done. You need to let it sit for about 5 or 10 minutes before you slice it. But one of the first things I'm going to do is pour the oil off that it's sitting in. Since I use a combination of ground beef and ground pork, it does end up with quite a bit of oil. So let's get that oil poured off. I've got a dish down here in the sink that I'm going to pour it into. And then one of the things that I like to do once it's out of the oven is spoon some of the sauce that we made earlier over the top of the meatloaf. And then we'll let it sit for about 5 or 10 minutes just so it can just kind of marinate all those flavors together. And then when we're ready to slice it, it should hold together a lot better. So let's spoon some topping. And then some people like to spoon a lot over the top. And then also reserve a little to put in a pitcher to serve at the table. And I like to do that too. You can just leave a little bit in the pitcher. And then when you slice it up and serve it at the table, you can pour just a little bit of the sauce over it. Or you can serve it with mashed potatoes and gravy, the ultimate in comfort food. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and gravy. And then you can pour a little gravy over it all. So now I'm going to let that sit until we're ready to slice into it. Well, now it is time to get that meatloaf cut and plated up. And we are serving it with mashed potatoes and gravy, or you could use the sauce that we put on top of the meatloaf. So let's take a look at it with the sauce on it. I've let it sit long enough that it's nice and firm. So look at this slice. And we'll just pour a little sauce on it. Now let's give it a taste. It's delicious, and the sauce makes it taste just that much better. It's nice and sweet and just delicious is all I can say. Now, let me just share something with you real quick. When you're making the sauce, you can either use the sauce as I showed it, or sometimes I like to add a little barbecue sauce and brown sugar, maybe a little Dijon mustard, mix that up a little bit, and then spread that over the top, or again, extra sauce for pouring on top of the meatloaf. So it's up to you. You can use the sauce the way it is, the way I showed you, or You can zhuzh it up a little bit more and add a little bit of barbecue sauce and brown sugar. Now let's take a look at it with gravy. Let's cut a slice, and this time we will use gravy. I don't know which one is better, the one with the gravy or the one with the sauce. They are both absolutely amazing. The meatloaf is nice and moist. And what can go better with meatloaf than mashed potatoes and gravy? So here's my question for you. What is your ultimate comfort food? Meatloaf, mashed potatoes and gravy, macaroni and cheese? Tell me in the comment section below. And just so you know, I've raised 3 children. I've managed a home for more than 45 years, and I am a nurse by profession. So if you want to learn more about running a household, cooking and cleaning and laundry and health and beauty, subscribe. In the meantime, this is Denise Jordan saying goodbye. I will see you in the next video.